Okay, Rabbi Yisai. Today we are going to be discussing the Shiloh, if it's possible to be over two Melachots in Shabbos for doing one Ma'aseh. It comes into the Gemara and the Bezim cut. The Gemara starts off with Machleikis over there. Itma Amanakesh v'Amashke Mayim Lizroim b'Shabbos. If someone has been Nakesh, means he pulls out some weeds, a some roim, or he puts water on the already planted Zroim. Mishumay Masrinam. What do you give Masra for? Rabba Omar Mishum Chayrish, Yosef Omar Mishum Zayreah. Omar Rabba Kavasi Didi Mistaber Madarka Shel Chayrish Lerpuya Ara, just like Chayrish making the land soft. Hanam Emirapi Ara, these things are also making the land soft. Omar Rabba Didi Mistaber Madarka Shel Zayreah Smuchi Pear, Zayreah makes the pears sprout. Hachanami Matzmach Pear. So there's Machlekes if it's Chayrish or Zayreah. So now Abai had a bomb, Abai had a kasha to both of them. Why can't you mechayev both Chayrish and Zayreah? The Chitei Makolei Chadigo Tarti Le Mechayev Alachada. If you're going to tell me that it's not possible to mechayev two, you can only mechayev one, even if there should have been two. If the guy is zoymer, he's pruning a tree and he needs the eitzim, so it's two malachas. He's chayev achas b'shum neiteah, achas b'shum koitzer. He's cutting because he wants the eitzim, but he's also being neiteah because he's helping the tree being planted. Kasha, so it's a kasha. Now we're going to be discussing Shittas Rambam and the other Shittas Rishonim, how you learn the maskana. So maskana Gemara would seem that said kasher, so the halacha l'maisa you should be chayev two. The Rambam, however, paskins you only chayev one. So the Noid Buda has a tshuva. Shai Pick asked him a kasher on the Rambam. He said, "What's going on? What's trying on the Rambam?" It's not in Zayim. No. Zayim Tzarech that's the kasher. Zayim Tzarech the Rambam's chayev two. But in these two cases of Menakesh and Mashkamai, and the Rambam paskins chayev one. Now he paskins actually in each one he paskins something else. I'm not going to discuss it. That itself is a theory. In one place he says Zayreah, one place he says Chayrish. But so he has the Mangoy in the second kasha. Let's go to the first kasha actually. The first count is theory. So he says, why did he paskin neged Rav? He asked, why did he pass like Rav Yosef neged Rav? Usually passing the other way around. Now, so maybe the one, and he went to go on to answer all his kashas upon him. He ends up asking this kasha as well, Chayrish is theory. So I think what he ends up saying is that it's not really such a theory. The child is a theory. I think you should be chayav two over here also. He says no, you could say a technical thing. That in these cases, it's not because he's arguing that you're not chayav shtayim, that it's not. Then generally can't be chayav shtayim. Punkt over here, they have this far of the Gemara, Lerpuya Ara, or Matzmach Peir, that here he happens to hold you chayav only one, but not that it's not possible to be chayav two. Now Taisvis, he explains the Gemara's Shiloh over here. He says they're arguing if you go basar machshava or basar the Maisa. He says because what you're doing over here is a Maisa charisha, but your machshava is on zagrash. The basar ikar the Taisvis, basar ikar malacha is lina, the daim al charish. Ikar malacha is charish. Rav Yosef holds avagav ikar malacha daim al charish. Machshava is hanefesh. The machshava lav the repiara. V'hachei pliga. The rabbis saw the basar Maisa midaminan. Lo v'leachar machshava. Yosef saw basar machshava is lina. You say they're arguing about Maisa, about machshava. That would be it's a local machlek. So you can say that's the Rambam was like Taisus. That's shot in the machlek. And always partially he goes to Maisa machshava. So he paskins. Now when like I say, he paskins something different in each case. But Alabama, it's not a Shiloh in general. Now there's a small problem with this. It's not a big problem because the Ur Zerua he says this machlekes is the same machlekes on in Menachos, exact same Shiloh. If you go Maisa, Maisa machshava, you have a cash Shiloh, very negayel Maisa by the way here. The guy wants to go fishing on Shabbos. So he's not allowed. So he doesn't care. He goes, he takes a net, a mitzuda, he throws him on, and he throws him mitzuda to catch fish. But he pulls up, turns out there was a baby that was drowning. He had no idea about it. He picks up a baby and a fish. So it's machlekes bigmar ayil chayev, Rabba and Rava. So one sheet I forgot who says what. I think Rava says you are potter, I believe. No, I forgot who says what. Akwana Shal, did go basar machshava. The Gemara says, "Ma'aseh basar machshava, Ma'aseh basar." If he goes machshava, his machshava was to be over. He wanted to go fishing. He didn't want to save the guy.
He said he got a fish also.
He got a fish also, but he also got a tinnik. So he did about so the Maisa he did was a tzolz nefashos. It was the one tzolz you could get involved in Rebbe Shiur. So what did he say? It was one Maisa. He got both. The Maisa of tzolz nefashos, but he wanted to go fishing, and he wanted to go fishing. He did go. He got a fish. He can't go on fishing. So if you go basar machshava, so then he's chayiv. If you go basar Maisa, then he's potter. So the Rosary says till she's tossing. So now the thing is, the Rambam over there, he paskins that you're potter. So it would seem he holds you go basar the etzem Maisa. See if he holds you go that's a mice. Over here you should have said like if he goes with Tosis, you should have said you go you're Charisha. He doesn't say that. He says by Mashkamayim, I believe. He says Mishum Zireh, so that will be a little issue. Yeah, okay, that's another malach you could say possibly. So now we're just going to say another few malachim. Shar Melech and Hilchos Shgagas talks about this, and he says a gewaltige chilek between the two gemaras. He says the only time you can be chayiv two is if it's two av malachas. Now, if it's two toldas, he holds then it's not shaykh to be chayiv two. That's shot in the Rambam. He says zoymer b'tzarach leitzim. It's not so pashat zoymer za'av, but it's Shittas Rambam. Is he calls it zoymer za'av malach. The pashat a lot of Rishonim Rashi holds zoymer that's a tolda of zireh, so it's not going to work like that. But the Rambam holds that zoymer za'av malacha. So there are two av malachas. You can say two separate av malachas, but he doesn't really explain it. It's a shvar svar, but this is shar malach. Two toldas, you can't be mechayiv two in the same mice. Two toldas, two different offices. But zoymer b'tzarach leitzim being kaitzer and zireh, yeah. So two toldas, two separate offices, you can't be mechayiv. It's a state in shar malach. Now, there's I'm just checking my notes over there. Two toldas, you couldn't be chayiv two. No, you can't. You can't. Yeah. Here, Agmar, they're all toldas. Therefore, you can't. The Chemdas Yisrael, which is the Kli Chemda, he has a different malach. Rameir Damplatsky, who's the Talmud of the Sochach of it. Ramash Kopenhagen, Migedoyle Poland from interesting stories about him. Not off. I mean, he came to America fundraising for, I think, the Aguda, and he was one of the biggest flops in the history of fundraising. He raised like $0.00, somewhere along those lines. But anyways, there's a lot of pictures of him, and so apparently his specialty was saying Shat and Zaymer B'tzarach Leitzim fundraising. He said that because he came, I think it was after, there was a big before him, a couple days before, Rav Kook and the Dvar Avram made a whole charter now. They came to raise a lot of money, so I guess they thought three rabbis raised money, but basically not everyone's cut out for the same job. So he says that it depends if the two malachas are the same shear, then you only chayav one. He says Zaymer v'tzarach leitzim, they're two different shiurim. He says because kaitzer, you need to cut as a certain shear. He says he goes into it's not so pasha, but he says you need a certain amount. I forgot the amount. You need the item, so it has to be. It's not kol shu. Most malachas the shear is kol shu. So over there is Zaymer v'tzarach leitzim. So the neiter is kol shu. Anything you take off inside the kaitzer, that's kol shu. So two separate shiurim, you can get two. Mash Enkein over here, where they're both the same shear, they're both kol shu. So then you take only chayav one. Now the Or Sameach and many others.
It sounds like a little bit like what he's doing is that he's making more Maisa.
He's spinning.
One Melacha needs more Maisa, so it's not totally the same Maisa.
Right, sort of, yeah. It's like two separate. I mean, yeah, right. Basically, it's two. So you're cutting more, right? It's basically saying, right. First action you get the zero, and a little more you get the kaitzer. Yeah. And the Or Sameach and many others say a different svar. This is a very simple svar. I mean, I think it's pretty simple. That Zoymer b'tzarach leitzim, you're doing one Maisa, but it's in two separate things. Basically, you want the piece of wood, and you're fixing the tree. So it's two things. There's a tree and then there's the wood, right? You need the wood, and you want the tree. So it's in two separate objects. So over there, I could say you look at it as two separate malachas. It happens to be doing vasachas, but in this object, it happens to be that it happened the same second. In the cutting, you did two things. But it's two things. This tree is kaitzer. I cut a tree and I fixed that and I planted the thing. Mashek in our Gemara, where it's clear that you're doing one maisa, you're watering the thing. Charles, how do you dot up that maisa? It's not trying to dot up one thing as two. So Mashenkin, if you're doing one, in other words, the exact how do you? I'm putting water. I'm trying to help the thing grow. You know what's happening, Charles? How do you look at it? There's more marapeara. So there, you can say that you chayav two. I mean, I guess it's not that simple because you're doing two things really. You're making the land a little softer, and you're also. I mean, it's not. But upon him, that's his gag. Now, just was the gabe chayiv two. It's interesting. There are other cases. There's Yerushalmi. I don't have it on me. Over there it is. But the Yerushalmi in Shabbos has a shaila. If the guy does oif and bishul tzvans, right? Oif next to the cottage cake, right next to the babka. No, I want the babka, not the Yerushalmi. So, well, I'll say that. There's I'll take it. There's the Yerushalmi has a shaila in Perek Gimel, Halacha Aleph, somewhere there. If a guy is heveru bishul b'vasachas, it's actually not there. I misquoted the location. But the guy is heveru bishul b'vasachas. What's the halacha? So the Yerushalmi says, oh, thanks for the So the Yerushalmi says that it's machlokes, it's a havara or bishul. So there also you could declare, why don't you have both? Right, it's Chav Gimel Mevez in the Eis B'Chodr Gemaras. About Bishul Yeshkan and the Gemara is Bishul Psila. That's one case, and you have other cases as well. Let's say Gemara later on by Mishamer, if you're sifting it, there's also a shayla if you chai Maraked or Bayrer, and there also Rashi. There Rashi has a side of chayim. Well, you do find other places of chayim too. This is just giving Maram famous. A couple of things, and just thank you all for listening. I'll just say, Gabi this Shal Ram, there's a lot of more people talk about it. And Achos David, the Karaneros, give you Maram famous. The Chaim Volozhin has a big tshuva about it in Chutam Hasholish, and his nephew in the Binyan Shel Simcha talks about it. Barichas. There's many other chaver. I didn't even mention Yeshua's Malkei. Should I mention that now? Yeshua's Malkei? Okay, fine. So Yeshua's Malkei, he's saying, I'm not sure if he's saying a new answer or he's going with our Smeach. Like upon him, when the Gemara says, Zayim V'tzarach La'etzim, the Gemara says you need tzarach la'etzim. Tais says a kasha. Why do you need tzarach la'etzim? It's mashma you mechaven, you want the wood. Mashma, you wouldn't be mechaven for the wood, you wouldn't be kain. So, in other words, actually mechaven, Dov Hashem is gaven also. It's only the feet. Rehuda, Zayfer Taisis. Let's see, Dov Hashem. Well, first of all, it's Taisis. Where's his Taisis? Taisis is Ein Gimel Mebeis. Tzarach Leitzim, it says over here actually, my cousin discusses it also. That Fil Rabbi Yehuda Machayv Lochshin Tzirch Legufo, but Inon, there's a discussion. Rabbi Yehuda's Chayv within the concept of the whole second, but Inon Tzarach Leitzim. Lo Mikra Be'etzim Chaitz El B'nei Zeh. We either have a Kriyam Manas Liv. So Kriyam Manas Liv. Shah here with the Taisvis. So Rabbi Kiveger and many others learn that Shad is the Zaymer always needs Tzarach Leitzim. It's felt in the Malacha. But the Pshil, yeah, even if you don't feel can be pottered because Namach Shin Zigufa, it's that it's felt in the Maisa of Zaymer. And we already spoke about this other daf discussion, I'm sure you remember from Shabbos. So he says because it's like Harei Al Manas Litzvah. That's the $1 million question. Upon him, Surah Malachas is just that's what the Malach is. It's not so pashut. I'll refer you to my previous daf discussions and the Sugya I'm saying wasted Savor. But upon him, so Reb Shila Kutner he learned Taisus Naya. He says Taisus is talking about only in such a case where we're doing two things at once. So when I'm doing two things, if I'm not mechaven, then you only get one of them. That's when you need tzarach leitzim. Dafkov here, it's a fundamental machlokes l'maisa. You only need tzarach leitzim when I'm doing two malachas. So whichever one you mechaven to, that's the main one. So he doesn't say you do. So in our case, I'm not even sure. I didn't have a chance to buy barichas. I think it ends up basically similar to our samech. Here, you're not since you're not mechaven to two separate malachas. You're just mechaven for one thing to do the thing. So it's not shaykh to be mechayev you two. I ain't showing the issue with malchah. Shkoyach, thank you all for listening.